I don't know whether to thank the ladies for that good food or not. My lungs, I don't have any room to breathe. But it's always a good time when we can be together with brothers and sisters in Christ as we were this morning and this afternoon. Appreciate Brian and his ability to make short announcements to get the job done. David's good prayer. Did you listen to it? And as you prayed, I thought tomorrow night's lesson would be very apropos because we will be dealing with Ananias, a certain disciple. He's the one that went after Saul. But we'll have more to say about him tomorrow, Lord willing. And Nathan's good job of leading our songs tonight. Tonight we want to turn our attention to the morning after. You ever have one of those days? You did something yesterday that you wish you had not done or had not said. And so you wake tomorrow or the next day and you see the consequences. Maybe you didn't sleep too well that night because of what you did. You want a do-over? We're going to give you some people in the lesson tonight that had a morning after. And if they had it all to do over again, they would not. But we live in a pleasure-seeking society, do we not? One reason our nation is like it is. No self-control. I keep telling my grandkids, and they laugh at me, back in my day, things weren't like they are today. Nobody took guns to school. If they did, they were in their pickup truck. And they were not locked. And they were not taken into the school, maybe except to show other kids, but they were not going to shoot anybody. The drug epidemic that we thought was wild and crazy back then, every once in a while you'll hear somebody was on drugs. And usually it was a movie star or some famous singer. And they generally died before the age of 40 or 20. So that's the kind of society we live in, and we could go on and on about that, couldn't we? Young people, you see it every day. And the grief and the sorrow that it brings to the family when somebody dies. And it's more than likely happened to most of us in here, most of our families, one way, as we used to say, one way or t'other. Don't want to have to bring back bad memories, but they're there. As David said in Psalm 51 and verse 3, my sin is ever before me. And it's ever before us, isn't it? We'll talk more about him in just a minute. We need to know that we're going to reap exactly what we sow. We sang about winter's cold and pain, and summer's harvest grain just a few moments ago. I don't know about you, but I'm sick of winter right now. Sick of this cold and pain. But you know what's coming, don't you? After this, the promise of the flowers, some of them are already popping their heads up if they didn't get frozen. But the devil tries to tell us, you're missing out. You church-going kids, that's all you ever do. 3 times a week. You Church of Christ people, my daughter said, you're too churchy. Isn't once enough? And just for the Sunday morning worship and you're done? Look what you can be doing Sunday night. See? Wednesday night. Gospel meeting nights. Especially during March Madness. Look at all the fun you could be having. Come on, man. Or, come on, go just this once. It won't hurt just this once. You know what just this once ends up to be? Just this twice, just this 5 times, just this dozen times. And on it goes. Or everybody else is doing it. What's wrong with you? Everybody else is wearing skirts that made of very little material, either down here or up here. Everybody else is wearing it. Come on. And parents are giving in to it because of the 4 years of high school popularity. Is it not true? We have a girl at home who's been talked to and told, and her parents let her wear clothes that when she sits down in the pew, she has to have a jacket or a shawl or something to cover her legs because there's not enough material to cover her. Who's behind that? It's not the Lord, is it? Who's picking out her clothing? Who's allowing her to pick out her clothing? We make choices. George Jones sang a song about 30 years ago or more maybe, the way time goes. He said, I'm living and dying with the choices I've made. And you know what? So are you. So are you. So am I. But we want you to know that you make good choices. There are good consequences to good choices. You do right things, then right things occur. You reap what you sow. But the devil's going to try to convince you that his way is the best. And you know what he's not going to do? He's not going to warn you of the consequences of the morning after. Is he? He's going to blind you to that until the morning after. And then he doesn't care about your alligator tears. And oh, I wish I hadn't. I knew better than to do that. But you didn't do better than that, did you? Girls will risk pregnancy. What? Because of popularity. Look who I'm going with. And if I refuse him, then he won't go with me and I won't be popular anymore. Parents, are you telling your girls this? Our granddaughter's doctor, arthritic doctor, said, men are devils, boys are devils, watch them. You know what I'm talking about. Others will risk being caught robbed, stealing, or risk lying to their mothers and their fathers, dressing immodestly, as we've already talked about, or trying the drugs just this once. It was free. Not the next time. He won't give it to you free the next time. He just hooked you on them. You think you won't steal to buy that drug? Make you feel the way you felt the other day? Make you forget all your problems? Think again. You will. You'll rob from your mother, your father, your brother, your sister. You'll rob from anybody. Just to get ahead in this world. And you will live and you will die with the choices you've made. Joshua's statement is true. Choose you this day whom you will serve. He'd already made the determination who he and his family were going to serve, didn't he? Can you say that? But as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. My parents saw to that. Did I want to do things that were wrong? Did I want to go places that I shouldn't go? And they would not allow me, and I'm so glad. Sometimes I don't know how they knew about those things. But you are not going. And when I found out the next day what went on there, Mo was glad he did not go. Because I wasn't being called into the office or being called by some girl's parent or have a wreck on the way home because of something I had put in my body, something I had ingested. Morning after. How you doing? Thinking of any that you've had? Here's some that had a morning after. Adam and Eve. Turn over to Genesis chapter 3 and verse 9. And let me ask you, if you want to trade places for them, when God comes calling. You know, I could tell when my parents called my name if I was in trouble or not. If there was a friendly situation, or you are in trouble. Get yourself down here. Verse 9. The Lord called unto Adam and said unto him, where are you? Ever been there? You ever been in that situation? Where are you? And he said, I heard thy voice in the garden, and I was afraid because I was naked and I hid myself. Why did they hide themselves? Because something they had done. This is, as it were, was their morning after, wasn't it? Where are you? God comes calling. Want to trade places with them about now? Where were they living? In a place called paradise, in the Garden of Eden, that anybody would kill to live there. What did they have going for them? Well, when you see the punishment of working by the sweat of your brow and child labor and pain and childbearing, thank you very much. We cannot hide from God. You know what Moses said in Deuteronomy, or Numbers 32 and verse 23? You be sure, Israel, your sin will find you out. Have you found that to be true? You may get away with something. I may be able to hide it from you. But you know who knows, as we talked about this morning, the great heart knower, that's God. He knows everyone's heart. He knows your heart better than you. He remembers more about you than you remember about you. How you doing? Jonah 1 and verse 3. Where'd Jonah go when God called him, told him what to do? Tried to hide from God. Can you do that? He won't find me in this ship. No, sir. Where'd Jonah find himself? Eventually in the belly of a whale, a great fish. Can't hide from God. And if you want more passages, read Psalm 139. David said, you can't get away. You can't go so high. You can't go so low. There's no place you can go to hide from God. God knows exactly where you are. Then Adam and Eve had their day, but so did their son Cain, didn't they? In chapter 4, just turn a page over, maybe. You know what Cain did, don't you? Because his deeds were evil, Peter says. God did not respect his offering, did he? Cain got mad. God said, sin lies at the door, like a lion ready to pounce. You stay in that attitude, nothing good's going to happen. Why did Paul say, don't tarry with your anger in the book of Ephesians in chapter 4? Be ye angry and what? Sin not. Let not the sun go down upon your wrath. Don't carry it with you because you don't do anything smart when you're mad. Have you? Have you ever done anything intelligent when you are mad? And nobody has to ask, is he mad? Is she mad? I never had to ask my mother, Mom, are you mad? I knew. You knew. Cain's not getting around this, not getting over it. So the wording tells us that he butchered his brother with a knife. He killed him. Okay. Is there going to be a problem? Is there going to be a problem for Cain? And the Lord said unto Cain, Where is Abel thy brother? Verse 9. Want to trade places with him about now? Who are you talking to? Not somebody who doesn't know, but somebody who does know. Where is Abel thy brother? And he said, I don't know. Am I my brother's keeper? I saw my older brother who went where angels feared to tread. And I saw the results of that. I remember sitting on our couch in our living room, and he smarted off to my dad, and I thought that was going to be the last thing he ever did. My dad was 5'7" and weighed about 130 pounds soaking wet, and here was a 17 or 18-year-old boy smarting off to him. He put his forearm underneath my brother's neck and drove him against the wall from the middle of our living room. Boom! And all the pictures shook. The chandelier was shaking. It never shook. You think this boy didn't remember that? I didn't want a morning after. I saw where smarting off got him. My dad said, You do that again? He said, We'll go through that door, which was about an inch or two away. And he said, I won't bother opening it. Exactly his words. He said, as long as you're putting your feet under my table, you're living in my house, and I'm paying for your living, you're going to do what I said. And when you don't like it, I'll help you pack. That ended that. Did that need to happen? Shake your head this way. Yes, sometimes we need to make believers, don't we, out of our children. I guess we all tested our parents. Did we not? Even as perfect as I was. Yeah. I know some others that could tell you more. Adam and Eve had their morning after. Cain had his morning after, and let's get his name up here. And then David. And the reading that John read in 2 Samuel chapter 12. Remember what Nathan the prophet's words were when David said, that man's going to be punished. The man that killed that poor farmer's little one lamb, who treated it like his own child, who fed it from his own table, and this rich farmer had a guest, and he doesn't take one of his multitude of his sheep, but he takes the poor man. He's going to pay for that. Remember Nathan's words? Underline it, highlight it. This was David's morning after. You are the man. You're the one that took the little lamb from the poor farmer. David, the king, sitting on his throne, and Nathan, a prophet. And David was a prophet too, as Peter tells us in Acts chapter 2. God's not afraid of you. He's not afraid of me. He wasn't afraid of David the king, was he? Well, I better not, because you know who David is. God is no respecter of persons, is he? He doesn't care how much money you have, how many hotels you may own or have built, or what country over which you are a king. Again, David said, what? My sin is what? You want a morning after? You just do things that ask for the consequences, and they're coming. And you will not be glad that you did what you did. Thou art the man. And I wrote in my notes, oh. Just like my brother when he got drilled against that living room wall, I was so glad I wasn't him. His feet weren't even on the floor. My dad made a believer, and God made a believer out of David, didn't he? In verse 10, Nathan said, now therefore the sword will never depart from your house. Did it? Read the rest, 2 Samuel. That's why David had to say, my sin is ever before me, because the results. Who was the fellow that said the cards and letters just kept coming on in? Just keep them coming. Well, the devil's consequences will too. And you know what David didn't have to worry about? If anybody knew what he'd done with Bathsheba and Uriah. God said, I'm going to make sure everybody knows, verse 12, for you did it secretly, but I will do this thing before all Israel, before the sun. And 4,000 years later, you know about David, and I know about David. And you know the consequences, and I know the consequences. And people are still doing what David did. How? The devil blinds us. It doesn't take much to blind you, does it? Does it? And the devil knows that. If you're weak, if you don't know what you're going to do when situations arise, and you're making up your mind when the situation arises, it's over for you. When you learn to drive, they'll tell you, drive defensively. Know what you're going to do. If somebody comes over to your lane, be ready. Don't overreact, but react. Already know what you're going to do. Now, that just happened to somebody else. That's what everybody says. When their son, their daughter, their mother, their father, their grandmother, grandfather are killed by such an action. Adam and Eve, Cain, David had their morning after, and so did Pharaoh. So did Pharaoh. It came after the 10th plague. You talk about stubborn. How many of those plagues would it take you to say, get out of town, Israel? Frogs, lice, flies. Whew! And then you can read verse 30, verse 29. Was everybody affected in Egypt? All the Egyptians were, weren't they? Their animals, their sons, the eldest, all died. There was a great noise of moaning and weeping. Pharaoh got up during the night, he and his servants, what's happening? And he found his own son dead. Because he'd hardened his heart against the commandments of God. And that's what you do, and that's what I do when I know better than to do what I'm doing or what you're doing. And we might as well tell you pornography. Watch it just once. Your mind can't say, no, I didn't see that. No, I erased that. I deleted that. It's there to stay. And you know who knows that? Well, I'll never do that again. Really? Just this twice? Really? Did Pharaoh have his morning after the consequences of disobeying God? Sure he did. And how about this fella? If we can get his name to come up, Achan, remember? In Joshua chapter 6, verse 18, God said, when you destroy Jericho, don't do what? Don't take the spoils. Leave them there. I'm Achan. God doesn't see what I'm doing. I'm going to take some clothing from these rich people, gold and silver, and I'm going to hide it. I'm going to hide it. Turn over to Joshua chapter 7. Chapter 7. I think I got the wrong book, don't I? Let's try Judges. I think it's there. No, where am I? Joshua? Okay, I was right the first time. Yeah. Oh, I see. Turned too many pages. Verse 21. Joshua said, when I saw among the spoils of goodly Babylonish garment and 200 shekels of silver and a wedge of gold of 50 shekels weight, then I coveted them and took them, and behold, they are hid in the earth in the midst of my tent, and the silver is under it. He said, I saw, I coveted, I took, and I hid. That's exactly what Adam and Eve did, didn't it? She saw, she coveted. God said you can eat of all the trees, but this one. Where'd the devil get her to look? Away from all the others to the one. What if I told you I don't want you to ever touch this table? Don't you ever touch this table. Do you hear me? You get in the building sometime all by yourself. And nothing's happened yet. I'm close. You know where it's heading, don't you? To tell somebody not to do something? I saw. I coveted. Bad start, isn't it? Then I took. And then he has to hide. What do bank robbers have to hide their money? We're rich. We're rich. Really? Can you go out and spend that money? No, you're not rich, are you? You're just days away from jail is where you are. But the lure to be rich, that's what the lottery's all about, folks. Don't have to work. Don't have to work another day in my life. And that's never good for anybody. Achan saw, coveted, took, and he hid. And quickly, last of all, concerning mornings after, Judas had a bad one, didn't he? How did his life end? Not good. He went out and what? Hanged himself. Difference between he and Peter. Peter repented bitterly in tears, didn't he? Look what happened to Peter. Look what happened to Judas and his morning after. You think about your morning after. Parents, drill it into your beloved children and grandchildren. We're teaching our grandchildren. Every time I would get them in, Judy and our grandkids' mother, Tina, would go to Walmart or some shopping mall, and I'd stay in the car with the kids. Oh, no, Granddaddy's going to give us. You ask them if they remember those days. Yeah. Every opportunity, even our granddaughter in Texas. They make good choices, they make you happy. They make bad choices. Some of you still have your little children with you. Get it burned into their little hearts, will you? Not through the television, but from you. Eyeball to eyeball, plain and simple. Do you understand me? And I'm not giving your children the talk. I'm not talking about somebody this small, but when they get old enough, you need to talk to your sons and your daughters. And you be plain about it. Let us look at a fellow who had a good afternoon, a good morning. Over in the book of Hebrews, chapter 11. Moses. Verse 24 of Matthew 11. And then we'll close. By faith, Moses, when he was come to years, he got older. Don't we all? He didn't remain a baby, did he? He didn't remain in Pharaoh's daughter's arms. He grew up. He grew old. When he was come to years, refused to be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter. Do you know what that was? Today he would have been a multi-millionaire in the line of royalty, rich, the best education, the best chariots, the best horses, the best food, the best clothing, honor. There goes Moses. Wow. Refused it. You may have an opportunity to make it in this world. See where it gets you. You can have anything you want, but it'll cost you your soul. Listen to the warnings of the Lord over and over. And this one man's example, he refused to be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter, choosing rather to suffer affliction with the people of God. And that's what the Lord told us right off the bat in the Sermon on the Mount in Matthew chapter 5, verses 10 through 12. Blessed are ye when men shall revile you and persecute you and say all manner of evil against you falsely for my sake. Blessed are you. He said, happy are you. In the book of Acts, I think it's chapter 5 and verse 41, the Christians rejoiced because they could suffer for the cause of Christ. Paul said in 2 Timothy 3 and verse 12, yea, and all that live godly in Christ Jesus shall suffer persecution. How are we doing? To be politically correct and we don't want to upset our religious neighbors? Jesus did. Jesus did. The apostles did, so much so that the neighbors wanted to kill them. And they succeeded with most of the apostles but John. And they succeeded with Christ. With a horrible death that we talked about this morning at the Lord's table. Did you hear that? Moses chose rather to suffer affliction with the people of God than to enjoy the pleasures of sin for a season. That's where we are. In this season of pleasure seeking, what are you choosing? It's the thing today. Be popular. Be liked by everybody. Jesus said, woe unto you when all men speak well of you. He was the greatest, kindest, gentlest, sweetest man that ever walked the earth. And how'd the majority feel about him? They feel that way about us, he said. He said they would. Esteeming the reproach of Christ, verse 26, greater riches than the treasures in Egypt. Yes, he could have been rich. Which way are you going to choose? I got a job out here in Never Never Land. Is there a church close? No, there's not. Maybe a couple 100 miles away. But I need that job to secure my career, and so I'll move out. Really? Lot a bad choice too, didn't he? The cities of the plain, well watered. What did he lose? Moses made the best choice, didn't he? Did he know about the Lord? Yes, he knew about the Lord. He forsook Egypt, not fearing the wrath of the king, for he endured as seeing him who is invisible. Moses knew about the coming Messiah. Read Deuteronomy 18:15 through 18. God's going to send a prophet like unto you, like unto me, he said. Him shall you hear. Yes, Moses knew about Jesus. Prophesied about him. How are we doing? What kind of morning after you do you want? One like Moses? You be with the Lord. Be with the Lord. Remember on the Mount of Transfiguration? Who was there with Jesus? Want to trade places? Moses chose rather to suffer affliction for the people of God than to enjoy the pleasures of sin for a season. We're in that little season, that brief season. And I remember Sam and Isaac and Rachel, other little ones here, Tanner, Hunter, all of you, young people. When I was your age, my whole life ahead of me. That commercial with that woman walking along a little pathway. I'm 60 years old. I got a long life ahead of me. Does she know that? Remember the rich man in Luke chapter 12? You've got much goods laid up for many years, he said. And God said, stop. Fool, this night thy soul shall be required of thee. Then who shall all these many years things you've laid up in store for yourself be? Thinking about self. Me, 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 me. Somebody said we're in the me generation. I need to get over that and think about others. Be kind to others. Be like our Savior was. Like we talked about him this morning of sinners. You're here tonight, and you are. And you are not a Christian. You need to be. Oh, that's just what the preacher says. Hurry up, get over, sing, song, go. Really? Is that all it means to you? On the day of judgment, when you ever have your parents say, get out. Go to your room. When we went to our room, you know what was there? Our bed. And that was it. We had a radio, I think. Depart from me, you cursed, into everlasting fire. You're going to wish then, that morning after, that you would have responded to the Lord's invitation? How simple it would have been to be baptized into Christ for the remission of your sins that have separated you between you and your God, Isaiah 59 and verse 2. Don't let that happen to you. Don't be like that rich man. This night thy soul shall be required of thee. Could be. Don't be fooled. Be prepared. If you need to respond, let it be right now while we stand. Nathan, while we sing.